Call to order the City of Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission for Wednesday, September 16th, 4 p.m. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Norris?
Here.
Commissioner Neely?
Here.
Commissioner Nacita?
Here.
Commissioner West?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Crocker?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Slack? Commissioner Walters?
Okay. If we can quickly go around the room and introduce ourselves out in the audience.
I'm Larry Patterson, City Manager.
Ed Darrow, developer. Randy Tyler, developer.
Colin Munder, the Oregonian.
Matt Graham, Oregon City News.
Sherry Bankhead, City Manager's Office.
Tony Conkel, planner.
Scott Archer, Community Services Director.
Nancy Ide, City Recorder.
Maureen Cole, Library Director.
Member, Finance Director.
Great. Citizen comments. Do we have any? None? All right. Future agenda items. Anyone?
Yeah, I think at one point, it need not be at the next one, but I think we need to look at what we're doing on our grant dispersal monies. Like I said, we're into the third month of the current fiscal year, and we're expended a large portion of those monies, and whether there are some, and I think the city manager indicated that we need to take a look at it, but I think we need to deal with it on a formal basis here to find out if there can be some additional funds made available, amended budget or something, so that we can continue with these requests for matching grants.
Okay. Can we make that an item for the, not the 30th, I'm sure our table's full for that, but the following? Okay. Commissioner Smith?
Are we going to, at a future agenda, or on a future agenda, discuss criteria again? Because it's not anywhere to be found tonight.
Yeah, I think that would probably be a good thing to do that at that same meeting.
Before all our money's gone?
It's on the list to get back to now.
Okay, so put that on the same agenda. All right. Anything else? Okay. Anybody have any changes to the agenda for tonight? I'd like to make one request in that I will, if we get to it, and I don't know that we will, I'll need to leave the chambers for the some of the grants, improvement grants. So I'd like to, if we do get to it, move the item G up to right after E. So just switch G and F, and then that way I can leave for the last three if we get to there.
Okay.
All right. General business. Let's start with agenda item A, review changes to Cove DDA. Mr. Patterson.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, at your last City Commission meeting, you did adopt the disposition and development agreement for the Cove. You had approved that DDA with an amendment regarding the maintenance of the Esplanade and those adjacent public areas. Mr. Janik has provided that wording with the red line version as well as some other minor edits through that development agreement. And so what we're looking at this evening is you to approve those revisions to that to the DDA there, if that is your pleasure. I should point out too, you will look, if you look at section 8.3, I think that's on page 15. That's titled pre-development costs. There is a blank in there too that we're still working on those numbers, and we'll plug that in. And as soon as we get that, we'll report that one back to you. What that is, that has to do with those pre-development costs for this project. That we're got kind of a range of numbers. We're trying to hone those down. Ours is one thing, and the other is a little bit higher than what we anticipate. At least what we're projecting them to be. We're saying that's somewhere around 210. I think the developer has those at about 500,000, which would work to our favor, mind you. But we're trying to refine those so we can get those numbers in there.
Okay. Comments? Discussion? Anything? No?
On this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, a couple of them. One, and maybe it was there, and I just didn't notice it before. On page 15, the the deletion of plan check fees and so forth. Could you just explain what that is for me?
You're talking about the blank that's in there?
No, I'm talking about the deletion as to what's included in that. It's the end of that phrase, original concept for land approval amendments, plan check fees, and building permit fees for Phase 1 and 2 work is deleted in this copy. Maybe you have one in which, in fact, it has been pulled out completely.
Yeah, I think what that goes back again to that those sentences up above. I think that was just trying to hone in on what these pre-development advances will be. There's actually two sets of numbers. Those that involve. I'm trying to see if that's. I'm trying to read here while I'm talking. So maybe I'm. Hold on a second. Let me read back through because I think that's captured elsewhere in here. Yeah, as opposed to the plan check and building fees, because those come in as you do the takedowns on the properties. What he's talking about here, it goes back to the deferred land use application fees, and that's the blank that we're dealing with there. So two different kinds of numbers that we're talking about. This is the pre-development stuff. These are the stuff that's going to come in, which would not include the plan check and building fees.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Shaw?
Well, I voted against this last time, but and I really want to see this go through, really. But my problem is, as I've kind of stated all along, that I'm not a real fan of using urban renewal funds for residential use. And but when you came in here with Kaiser, that tipped me over to the other side, because now we got a tenant, and this is real tangible. So I guess I'm looking for that tangible thing so that we're not speculators here. We're going to spend $3 million to speculate. So I'm looking for that kind of touchy-feely little thing here to make me say, that I'm kind of, I want this. I mean, I want the project to go. Guys, don't think I don't. It's a great project. It's, you're the guys. But I'm trying to find that tangible thing for me, so I'm not speculating with $3 million of our taxpayers' money here.
Ed Darrow with the developer. One of our issues when we started out with Kaiser, we had actually entertained another apartment project there, and we said, well, whoever comes to the table first will actually be our participant. When Kaiser ended up passing, we went back and said, all right, what's viable in the marketplace? And we were given the mandate by the city that we needed to make changes so that there would be more increment on the ground earlier. So we said, what's viable? The viable thing is apartments. So we took the medical office off, 80,000, and we moved it over in between the condos. So that reduced the number of condos, still gave us 80,000 square feet. We have been working with an entity until about a week and a half ago, and they decided to pass to do the office building. But what we have in hand is the 220 apartments. And that is a given, and it's a mandatory thing before you move forward with Phase 2 of the funding. So at Phase 1 of the funding, we will close on the land for the apartments. That's a pretty major commitment. So there's $5 million that's going in towards that in total. The requirement to have a loan recorded in Phase 2 before you go to doing actual Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the infrastructure, which means that there'll be, that's probably going to get up into it's about $140,000 to $150,000 a unit times 220, so that's a pretty major financial commitment. Effectively, by making the modification when we lost Kaiser, we added almost $30 million to the overall increment that will ultimately come into the city. So I think that's very positive. It's a matter of how does that step in and how does that support the tax increment. We feel very confident that as that project moves forward, the core area, which is pretty spectacular, where the office will be, the new 80,000 up to, that's a very viable package. We have not gone out to the general community We've contacted people personally, but we'll, probably in a month, we'll be going out to the brokerage community and say, all right, where are all the guys that need, offices, and put it out that way. And that will bring in a lot of people. But we still want to make that like that's the core area, and that will, in fact, come second. But we have an increment right now, which when you went through your financial drill that was showing, when does this stage in? The dollars are being supported by that first increment, which is the apartments, and we expect to bring that office in directly there behind. So we haven't lost the office, it's just being delayed.
Let me clarify one point. Mr. General said when we talked about the increase of $30 million, that's in the overall assessed value versus the increment 30. That'll convert back to amount of increment, but it's assessed value, not increment.
Exactly.
Commissioner Smith?
I'm kind of in the same place that Commissioner Shaw is, and actually was a lot more excited about the previous plan. I'm not excited about the apartments. I'm not excited about the connection to the shopping center that has slowly disappeared. And so I kind of agree with the comments that have been made already tonight on that.
Commissioner Neely?
I am going to request an edit at this point. First of all, I'm going back here to page 17 and 18. 8.7.2 is an addition that addressed my concerns, almost. And it's a piece that's missing. If you go in that particular section there and you drop down to the fourth line, it says the association shall be responsible for the maintenance and repair of the trails. The change I want is comma, esplanade, comma, and water resource planting area. And that we've made that esplanade and trails in terms of the descriptions in here did not include that planted area, and
That's fine.
that's a critical piece, I think.
We can make that edit.
All right. Commissioner Norris?
Thank you. If I would like to go back to Rocky's comment about the shopping center connection disappearing. I didn't think it had.
Ed Darrow, once again, if you look at the site plan over here, there is a connection right in the middle, so that connection is available. We're actually supporting another connection, which is down here at this very end. Both of those are shown on the drawing now. And that is for future connection. We don't have the right, obviously, to say we're going to push through the shopping center, but in any number of projects, we provide that stub out, and that will support future entrances. The only thing that would be necessary, that we would have to drop a certain amount of this parking that's right along the edge, and the project does support that without that parking. So you have this opportunity to come through here, and if in fact this would be a very positive part of the whole project. If that has to slide up and down for whatever reason on a redesign of this area, we would be very supportive of that, and so will this owner of this project.
Commissioner Smith?
Are those trails or driveways or what?
That's a road. That's a stub out for a road. Ultimately, what we will do, we would like to put a pathway that'll come in right off this sidewalk and go up here and get in so that these people can actually walk up, these people can walk up. And we've done that on almost all the projects where we have a real close proximity to a commercial area.
I guess I'm extremely confused because if they're roads, they're just going in. The road is just going into the parking lot of the apartment building. And yesterday on our drive around the trolley, the city manager actually spoke as to no connections at all being there, and so that confused me.
I talked about the one down here at the bottom, the stub out for the pedestrian thing.
So that road would go through to the side of the shopping center? The one down below?
This one, yes, that's an emergency requirement. We just.
So it would only be an emergency, so that's not an access?
This is the access right here. This is.
And where does that go?
access.
That goes right to
into
the back
center.
alley of the shopping center?
Yes, but right now, the shopping center has to be redesigned to even consider a connection.
Well, I guess what I mean, though, is if that road goes through there, the road's just going right into the parking lot of the shopping center. It basically dead ends. It doesn't.
Well,
It
but
doesn't.
we don't have the right to control what they do.
No, you don't. But you can create a road that goes through there that access is that better than that width?
Well, there is no, I mean, this whole area, this is all parking, this is all servicing, all the back, of
I'm
everything here.
Pretty
All
aware
this
of
is-
what's there.
Okay, but then what would you suggest? I don't see how you would get anything better than that unless you took out some of the buildings and put a road in. We've done any number of projects like this where we provide a stub out. Ultimately, that usually has to change to some degree to accommodate a redesign of the contiguous property. Usually the property contiguous is vacant, so we provide a stub out, and that's where you would expect something to happen. But if it's not, this whole area here is a road that comes in. This parking will come out when that
that's
connection
what-
is made.
Okay.
So it's
That
designed to
answers the
handle that.
question. Thank you.
Commissioner Neely?
Yeah. I guess I'm going to refer to the phase scheduling that's, I don't know how to do this. It's in the, well, I guess that's 5B. I guess that's premature. So I'll hold off on it.
Okay. Commissioner West?
Do I understand it correctly that in your new proposal here, the bike lane is going to be on the street, so it's not going to be like a continuation of, how many feet was the path? 12, 18, 20?
The Esplanade is
Esplanade's 20.
And the path area is 4 feet as it connects up through here.
Yeah. And then the bikes are,
It's 8.
Excuse me, 8.
it's
8
8.
and then 6, and then the...
4.5-foot landscape buffer, and then a 6-foot bike path
On the street.
on the street.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Nacita?
I need a point of clarification. The red line development agreement is based on what this commission approved the last meeting, correct? So we're not actually voting on the development agreement?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll then save my comments for the concept.
Okay. Commissioner Walters?
In respect to the change that you proposed, including the water resource area, does that also cover any potential dredging activities?
That was not the intent, because they're not involved in that. The intent was there where we're in fact specifying, or you're specifying this restoration of that particular area there. That's what I was talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Neely?
I did want to go to 8.7 because I'm a little bit confused by the wording. 8.7 is it deals with the maintenance plan through Phase 1 and Phase 2. Obviously, the property owners there aren't going to do anything until there are property owners there. And it says here, after completion of Phase 1 and 2 work, and until the commencement of construction Phase 4, the agency acting through the city shall maintain the Phase 1 and 2 work, and then all references is to Phase 1 and Phase 2, period. Is the intent here to maintain it until we're into Phase 4?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know, I'd like you, because we're going to come back, I think, with a slightly edited version, like you to take a look at that wording more clearly, because I think it's a little bit confusing as to whether it's just through Phase 1 and 2. The first sentence suggests that it's through Phase 4, but I think subsequent language leaves the impression it's only through Phase 1 and 2. And I would like you to take a look at that wording, if you would.
Mr. Patterson, that's doable? All right.
I'll check that with Mr. Jack.
Any other discussion? Nope. All right. We will move on to agenda item B, the Cove, phases 1 and 2. Mr. Patterson.
Yes, Section 4.3 of the development agreement calls for the agency to approve the detailed plans for Phase 1 and 2 construction. These were originally submitted to you on your review on January 9th of 2009, of which you approved those, but because of the withdrawal of the Kaiser from the project, there did require some subsequent modification to the development, so you have to approve those revisions as well. I will remind you there's also a parallel process in regards to the land use process, and our planning staff can explain that to you as well. And I'll let Mr. Darrow and Mr. Tyler explain to you the Phase 1 and Phase 2 modifications.
Commissioners, there were 8 proposed changes to the previously approved documentation for the comprehensive development plan and the detailed development plan. And 6 of those affect the concept development plan and 2 the detailed development plan. So we'll just start off with the first one. It's the has to do with the what we call the mixed-use office building. And basically, there is, because that's on the water's edge, a 50-foot setback, we had some intrusion or encroachment into that in the initial plan. We reduced the size of the footprint of the building so that it no longer has to be within that area. That eliminates the need for having a variance or an exception for that move. So that's pretty straightforward.
That variance was for this little corner right here. It just went over into that buffer area slightly, and we said, let's just move it and not have a variance. So very minor adjustment.
Any questions about that? If not, we'll go to the next one, which has to do with the access driveways to the condominium buildings, and that they were 2 of those drive areas that were eliminated in order to allow more room for a gentler slope in and out of those buildings.
And that's right here. We had an access here and another access over here. So we felt like that was just a positive approach to, keeping entrance, ingress, and egress off of the thoroughfare.
If there aren't any questions on that, we'll go on to the next one, which was the relocation of up to 80,000 square feet of mixed-use area. Now, this is the area that had been designated for Kaiser, and basically taking that out, moving it up to an area between the condominium buildings. And that resulted in the reduction in size of those condominium buildings by 22 units each, and brought the total condominium count down to 180 units. But interestingly, it had the effect, because of putting an 80,000 square foot office building in there, as Mr. Darrow mentioned earlier, actually adds to the potential value of that area and ultimately the increment as well.
There is one thing, just as a minor comment, and it's somewhat of a negative effect to us as a developing entity. By reducing the number of condominiums by that amount, we as a developer who have been in here since day one actually lose a tremendous amount of value to us, because we've given up the apartment site to bring Sladen to the table. So they will be building that out and owning it independently. So what we've done in massaging this to make it work is reduced our value. It has increased the overall value of the project, which is positive for the city, but we've kind of gone backwards. And that's only just a minor comment to that every once in a while you have to give something up to make it work, and it's a positive part of the project, and we're actually more than willing to do that.
So a quick question for that. So you said that's 80,000 square feet of commercial?
That's up to 80,000 square feet.
Up to 80,000.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
Well, it means that we'll go out and we'll negotiate with the different entities that are available to occupy that. We'll build it for them, or we'll actually let them build it, depending upon what's out there. So we have the potential for 4 different buildings here that could be interconnected. The reason we did that is so that if we need to break it down into smaller pieces, we can actually bring in a 30,000 or a 40,000 square foot user. And we were working with a 40,000 square foot user, which was going to take the back buildings. That has not gone forward at this point. So it gives us the ability to push it up to that level, but we can still get in there and do something that'll be probably up to a minimum of about 60,000.
16?
60.
60, okay. So just for reference, what does a potential tenant of a 60 to 80,000 square foot, is this retail, office, commercial?
No, that would be office.
Office.
What we would prefer to see is in the front 2 buildings, and I've talked with Sladen about this, if we ended up just building those on a spec basis ourselves, we would lease the top floor, and the bottom floor we'd keep the 2 sides for restaurants. It's an absolutely spectacular setting. with all of this open area and all the visual corridor, it would be a real nice place to have two potential restaurants there.
So how many potential employees or people could you see in a 60 to 80,000 square foot
You have that
office
number?
space?
Probably up to 400.
So potentially 400 people using that space down there, and okay.
I think that was a combination of both of them, though, wasn't it? That sounds like a lot. Was that including the mixed use, Randall?
Yeah, probably was, yes.
Yeah.
So maybe that'd be a little bit less than that. Depends kind of on the kind of business. The main thing for us, what we need is flexibility. And so we don't want to be committed to saying that 60,000 or 80,000 square feet is going to be medical office building. It might be general office. And in that fourth item where it talks about the apartments, you'll note that it also says that it could be up to 80,000 square feet of office. So we want to maintain the flexibility. We want to be able to respond to market conditions.
So if you were to build, let's say something, market isn't great and you build something 60, does that stay 60 or do you still have the flexibility to build up to 80 at a later date?
It would really depend upon the footprint and the way it's designed. If, in fact, you design it so that you could add a floor, that's very expensive to do, and we most likely wouldn't do it. So once you build it and commit to that size, you're pretty well locked in.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Were there any other points you're going to make at this point?
Not on that topic.
Not on that topic.
Okay.
But you're continuing on the 5B discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
So the next item, 2.5 acre parcel, is the one that we've been talking about with Tri-Cities. They're the current owner of that. We are in negotiations with them, and those negotiations are coming along favorably. That would do two things. It would not only provide parking for the office buildings there, but also provide a significant positive opportunity for the public to park when they're visiting any of a variety of public activities that might be there, including the Esplanade, the plaza, the trails, the nature walk out on the preserved peninsula, any of the water sports activities. The reason that works, and we've done this in other projects, is that there are peak demand for peak uses for different peak demand for different uses occur at different times. Obviously, the office building generates people who are parking during normal working hours during the week. The public activities tend to be most busy in the evenings and on weekends. So we develop a reciprocal parking agreement that outlines rules and responsibilities and maintenance for the parking area, and that can work out to be very successful. You want to add anything?
No.
Okay. Any comments? No.
The next item talks about a recreation facility that at one time was located on Main Street, and we chose to relocate that within the apartment complex. And
I think the positive benefit of that is that we end up having a larger public access to this immediate area right here, which will be a real nice view corridor, and we terminate the Esplanade there, and then it turns into the walking area. So there will be, and some of these areas show these blow-ups, but there will be a nice little stopping point there and a place to kind of sit around and hang out and look at it for the public. So it's a very nice transition area now.
Oh, Commissioner West.
Originally, wasn't that intended to be also shared by the condo owners? So now it probably, or I'm guessing it isn't.
It will not be shared by the condo owners. One of the things which we had discussed is for this being a quote-unquote yacht club, if you will, is to do a recreation facility on that, and we're actually doing preliminary concept drawings on that now and how to make that work, which would have a rec building in it. It would actually have a spa facility in it. It would have the ability to service people that are bringing their boat in for food and what have you of that nature. So it's we'd have a little bit of an expanded program there.
Okay, the next item is the DDP Phase 1. This involves, well, backing up a little bit, we went through some extensive efforts with Kaiser to make them a nice home. And one of those, they wanted to move Main Street and to do a lot line adjustment. Well, we did the lot line adjustment, got that approved, and then once they had disappeared, there wasn't any need for the site to be custom tailored to their needs any longer. So we decided that it would be a better situation to not move Main Street and to leave it in its current location. So sort of that's a change, but it's not really a change because we're leaving it where it's been.
Main Street was realigned, come over this way, and came back in here. And that reduced this 12 acres down to 9.27, which is what Kaiser wanted. So we went through the whole drill, did the lot line adjustment, did all the engineering, designed it for them, and then went back to square one. Put this in. There are some positive benefits to this. There are positive benefits to this in that the underlying utilities that are here do not have to now be moved. So there's about a $60,000 savings in costs, which is very positive. We are going to go ahead and, per the city engineering department, do this roundabout. We would have preferred not to. That's a very expensive thing to do here, but it will create better movement. So all in all, I think we'll balance out here and actually have a better program in terms of the overall project.
Commissioner Neely?
Yeah, I sent out an email, and I believe it was forwarded to all the Urban Renewal Agency people. I did get a response from you, Randy, and that had to do whether the existing right-of-way there would, in fact, deal with all of the requirements we have for meeting the street conditions that we would have, and also meet the requirements of our Trails Master Plan. And you had sent me an email where you did some measurements, but I was kind of curious what the total width of the right-of-way actually is. And so apparently we're going to get some information.
Yeah, the right-of-way is 60 feet. Currently, there's only about 37 feet of that it's being used. That's edge of pavement to edge of pavement. So there's another 24 feet or so that's available. The way this was laid out provided for an 8-foot lane pedestrian area, walkway, sidewalk along the edge of the cove, then a 4.5-foot landscape median. And the purpose of the landscape median is not only to provide an attractive landscape area, but also to give some sense of safety between pedestrians and vehicles or bicycles. The bicycle lanes are 6 feet wide each, and then are two 11-foot travel lanes. So that leaves 12.5 feet for a swale, a landscape swale, which would be part of the stormwater cleansing process going through the biofiltration. There is room there if we thought that. I think the city's code requirement is 5.5 feet for a sidewalk. So we're increasing that substantially up to 8 feet. And then if you add the 6 feet of bicycle lane, you've got 14 feet of area that's used for moving around that's not involving automobiles. So we think that there is adequate room there, but there's also enough room to be flexible.
I think it meets my basic concern. I think I mentioned in my email, my concern was that we have currently a 12-foot walking path. I think it's 12 feet wide.
It is, yes.
And along the cove, and that if we currently indicate that as that pathway is being used by both pedestrians and by bicycles, that this 8 feet and then would not be available to bicycle use, and there has been conflicts, I might mention, between pedestrian and bicycle users on our current path. By having that 6-foot bike lane there and the 8-foot sidewalk on the one side meets that 12-foot requirement. I'm not particularly concerned that we don't have a sidewalk on the other side, because I think most of the traffic, foot traffic, would in fact be using the cove side, and you had internal pathway use throughout the apartment plans that we've seen that I think would meet the needs of those residents, and I don't see that anybody else would actually be using the other side of the road when we have a nice pedestrian pathway along the cove, and that's what you're putting forward.
Right.
I would suggest that one of the other things we could do, and we will make note of that, is to, at the end of the esplanade to the south side, actually have signage there that says, this is the end of the bike trail, now go onto the bike path itself, and the rest is for pedestrians, so we could handle and manage that that way.
And we are working with staff to determine the best location for crosswalks so that the apartment dwellers can get effectively, safely over the street onto the pathway system. Anything else? Okay. So the last item is public restrooms, and as part of the exchange that we're working on with Tri-Cities, there was a little parcel that they would very much like to have. We had located restrooms on that parcel. We're basically moving those around the corner to facilitate the exchange with Tri-City. So that's the last item on our list. If you have other questions, we'd be happy to entertain them.
Mr. Neely?
And I know we're talking basically about phase 1 and 2, and I don't know how we answer this question, but I wanted to go onto your pages where you actually outline the activities and the 6 phases that you present. And in reference, I'll make a reference at this point. If you would go into page, if you go on to page 46, is where we talk about the width of our vegetative corridor, and we do have the 200-foot buffer of vegetative corridor applied to anadromous fish-bearing streams, and even though the cove is in a stream, we do have anadromous fish in it. Now, let me say the actual code reference there is talking about areas that were undeveloped, and you could get in an argument this is developed and allowed to deteriorate, and we could probably get an argument of what undeveloped means at that particular point. The intent of the 200-foot was, I think, to preserve a decent vegetative corridor within which one existed.
Yes.
However, we've talked about, and I thought it was part of the original agreement that we had, that you would actually be maybe putting the trail along the peninsula. Is that still the intent under your project?
The esplanade?
Yes.
Yes, that goes in phase 2.
Along the peninsula?
No, I don't think that's the right
You mean out here, on this peninsula?
Yes.
The intent there, and that's, I think it's showing in this phase right here, which would be phase 4, is to progressively do that. Instead of just going in and saying it has a lot of invasive species, we want to do that, not just go in and scarify it and take them all out because it's such a sensitive little area, and you've got a lot of water movement on the riverside.
Yeah.
So the intent was to do it progressively, and it shows as phase 4, but the idea was to do it progressively and remove some and then leave it, then remove some and then leave it. So it was kind of a continuing program there, but that would ultimately be completed in phase 4.
I guess I don't see them listed as items into your phase 4 on this particular spreadsheet we've got here.
Well, and I'm not sure which one you're looking at, but
Well, it's our page 4 and 5 in the document that we have here, where we have phase 1, the activities that are going for proposed development timing in phases in 1, and proposed development timing phases on the other side. They're both given there in terms of years and which certain activities are going to occur, and I don't see phase 4 addressing those.
Well, then it needs to be addressed.
Okay, if that's the question. I regard, there are issues with that, and you're talking about invasive species and so forth. And from my standpoint, without getting into the argument about 50-foot and 200-foot buffer on the cove side, I regard this area as a potential mitigation site, and the activities that you do as potential mitigation efforts. But it isn't expressly stated here, and this is a Phase 1 and 2 thing that we're putting forward, but I would like to see it.
Yeah, and it really is, it's intended that it will be completed in Phase 4 without the formal definition that it's going to be being done progressively. So Phase 4 is the place it's supposed to be.
Okay. All right. I have another query,
All right, go ahead.
but it's somewhat different than the one I had. So I
Let's-
don't know if
let's
you
go to
want...
Commissioner Weston.
Yeah.
Since my question's kind of piggybacking on yours, well, I'm not imagining the trail on the peninsula there to be anything like a paved path.
Nope,
It's just very natural, and there already is a path there. I'm not imagining it to be a whole lot bigger, really.
No, the intent is just to basically clean the area.
Yeah, clean it up.
Make it accessible, but without it being, a formal path system.
yeah,
It'll
yeah.
be, probably just using, a wood
Markers.
product.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Commissioner Neely?
Phase 7 and 8 aren't put on the spreadsheet, and maybe this was true of the former development agreement, but Phase 8, and I forgot where I saw it right now here, but Phase 8 is the city's responsibility in terms of funding.
That's correct.
Was it originally that way?
Well, it's always been that way, yeah, and it's a matter of, who wants to do it, or shall we do it, or shall we get it done and accomplish it? My expectation is that we'll probably end up doing it.
The Phase 8 is, I believe, the mortgages and so forth
That's
that you
right.
have there.
And the way that, in terms of our concept, it isn't a profit center, quote-unquote, but we will actually put it out for not only the general public, but for the condominium owners, and we would actually build that as people would want it.
Yep.
So it's not like go out and build a big marina and say, all right, well, who wants to show up? We would do it progressively.
It indicated that the city would be the funder. I'm not terribly concerned about that, and I'll just kind of state why. We've been very successful with Marine Board grants, and particularly if we're going to come up with a request where we don't have any in terms of non-motorized craft, which we're talking about at one point there, I think we might be very successful in getting some grants to support that. And though that would not necessarily be it may be a draw for condominium owners, but have a broader draw because we don't have any place else in Oregon City that I'm aware of where we have availability for kayaks and so on. The other reason I'm not concerned about this too much is that I think we need to do some talking about in-water enhancement of the cove. And we have another item at the City Commission meeting where we're going to be talking about putting forward a task force. And Phase 8 is far enough out there that some of the recommendations that would come into from this particular task force that's going to be dealing with the buildup of material there at the mouth of the cove. How do you distribute the material you're removing, and the potential perhaps of using that material for in-water enhancement, environmental enhancement, I think has to be built into the ultimate Phase 8 plan. So I don't have a concern that it's not listed here. And so I think this is good conceptually, but I think that may in fact modify as time progresses. And so I don't have that much concern.
I think that's all of our expectation, is that it's a real opportunity in this area right here in particular to do some very unique things. So we look forward to doing that.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't want people to have the impression that they have to wait till Phase 8 before there might be an opportunity for canoeing or kayaking. So
Right.
that could be something that goes forth in parallel with other activities. Yeah.
Further discussion? Commissioner Nocita.
In contrast to Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Shaw, I actually think this plan is better than the one that was presented with Kaiser in the project. My reasons for thinking that are, one, the prior plan, as we've discussed, had a kind of like a very solid wall of condos that were of the same height and was just very stark. And office building in the middle gives a very welcome break to that. And I also actually do prefer, given the need to have density occur within the city limits as opposed to sprawling outward into the countryside, I do appreciate adding density within the city and having a residential base that, for example, could support downtown and its businesses. Nancy, could you throw up that Stastny drawing? Thank you. I do have a concern. I've already expressed the fact that I just think that, and unfortunately this is still a deal breaker for me on the vote as a whole, the Water Quality Resource Area Code is just not being complied with for this project. And this amendment doesn't change that. Actually, I was thinking of
Parking lot, City Hall.
no, the one in the. Oh, okay, all right. Well, I think most people know what I'm talking about. It's the drawing that Mr. Stastny did in our 2006 report, and I'll describe it since it's going to be far away. He actually did a very nice and skillful drawing showing what a remodeled Oregon City shopping center would look like with a connection from Dunes Drive into the apartment area and a kind of a roundabout right in the middle there. And I've mentioned that I think this is very good urban design thinking. And I just don't see any reason why any obstacle to actually taking that skillful urban design knowledge and applying this in this instance, looking ahead to what a future remodel of the shopping mall might be. The design here, as you can see from the area where the design sketch of the apartment complex is, it's the Stastny's drawing shows Dunes Drive kind of like an axis, with a monument of that little roundabout within the middle of the apartment complex. And even if that were just a pedestrian connection, because Dunes Drive, as I learned from Tony and the planning folks, is not technically part of the TSP to actually make that connection from Dunes Drive into, say, a connection with Agnes. But there was no reason to me why that, the thinking going into Mr. Stastny's sketches couldn't be actually applied looking ahead to a future remodel of the Oregon City Shopping Center. The stub out, I'm appreciative that it's, it could be moved back and forth. However, the construction as shown here, if the axis of Dunes Drive were extended into the apartment complex, you wouldn't see something nice like a roundabout with a monument maybe or a fountain, some nice amenity. What you're basically going to see if you extend Dunes Drive through or a pedestrian pathway on that axis is just the back of one of the apartment buildings. And there's such an opportunity here to do something really sweet with the design of the apartments. I don't know how set in stone your sketches are, but I just think that's a real lost opportunity. And if it's not set in stone, I would hope that that's something you might consider revising.
One of the things that we did when we started making the modifications is that we actually went ahead and did full drawings of a modification of that center. We took those drawings and we went out to 3 of the largest developers in this area and tried to convince them of exactly what you're saying. Come to the table with us. Let's buy this. Let's remodel this, and we'll bring Dunes right straight into the project. The concept is correct, but the market is what's controlling. We can all do pretty drawings, and we've done them over the years, and we've set them on the shelf. It's not something that's going to happen now. Nobody wants to pick that up. Nobody wants to commit to that. Maybe in 5 or 10 years it might happen. So we're dealing with the reality of how do we get a project built and out of the ground, and we would love to have done that. I mean, that actually, in some of our original concept drawings was doing that, so we had incorporated that, but when we got down to the wire of actually working with three of the biggest guys in this state that do it, none of them would actually step up to the table. So we said, all right, if that's not going to happen, then we have to contain ourselves. When you do a project of this size, even like Oswego Point, where you have just one access off of 43, we built, $78 million there at the time, and I said, my gosh, we've got one little teeny access. Here we have the same thing happening. Dunes. We have what we call a window to the project, which is very unacceptable, basically. But what we're going to do is make that ultimate destination so nice that people will take that roundabout approach. It would have been much better for us. We did that, then we actually went back and we tried doing a design where we talked to the owners of the shopping center. We would come through Dunes, we would completely rip out part of their parking lot, put in all new planning, and then turn and go through the Firestone access, buy that building from them, tear that building out, and come down that way. Now we've got frontage where we'd like to be, which is on McLaughlin. That didn't work out. So, I mean, we have, I went back and looked at drawings today because we were looking at some boards that we needed to use, and we've done so many concepts, but concepts are just that. You still have to build it. You have to have the reality of where did the financing come, and that's kind of where we're at this point. We would love to have done that. It's not going to happen in the near future. So the best thing that we designed was, how do you, in fact, accommodate that potential connection? It's a very positive thing for this project to be able to connect into that. So we'd like to have had it. We'd like to have had it done on an overall basis, like done in that drawing and done on the drawings that we did, but it just isn't going to happen.
So it's the economic realities that challenge something like Stastny's drawings. And more specifically, we understand that the people who purchased that paid a good deal more for it than it was actually worth. And in the lender language, there's a very painful prepayment penalty, so that if you were to try to buy it, it would be extremely difficult.
It's almost $5 million just to pay a loan off.
And then there's the problem of buying out the existing leasees, and the problem that it doesn't have a real anchor tenant. So there's just a whole bunch of things that make it very, very difficult.
We did our best, very honestly, to do that, because I would like to have seen that, because then you could have monumented it right there. You could have had that entry. You'd have a stop sign. You wouldn't be doing the circuitous. Now we've got to drive underneath the overpass. I mean, there's so many things that would have been positive that if there was any way to do it, we would have done it.
I just want to thank you for your thoughts. I just want to comment and respond a little bit. When I was working as a development permitter, I did a lot of subdivisions that had to accommodate what's called a future street plan. When the future street that was planned, it was anticipated that it would not happen for 20 years or 50 years or ever, but you still did your design in accordance with that map on the future street plan. Similarly, even though it might not happen in 1 or 5 or 10 years, I don't see why one couldn't design the apartment complex with the anticipation as to whether it's going to happen tomorrow or 25 years from now. That connection and that possibility could be accommodated. And as far as the economics, I recognize I've actually had lunch with Mr. Leland a couple weeks ago and discussed with him my interests in the shopping center and the fact that because we are no longer needing to subsidize the Rivers Mall with the jug handle being financed by the stimulus money, I think that frees up the money we would have otherwise spent on the jug handle for exactly solving and addressing the problems and dealing with the obstacles to redeveloping the Oregon City shopping mall. And I think that was like $16 million or something like that. I don't remember the precise figure. So I wouldn't necessarily want to treat it as a no-can-do at all, because I think that stimulus money has given us exactly that type of potential options to reconsider that.
There is a way that could actually potentially be accommodated. If you look at this corner right here, that's a very substantial area. If, in fact, the road coming in from Dunes here could be aligned so that it would come over and ultimately connect here, this whole area could be remodified. And there is no reason for us as developers not to want that to happen. I mean, that would be a very positive part when you can actually have direct access to a commercial program like that. And we did that in Lake Oswego again. We actually put footpaths and had direct connections into the commercial because it's very supportive for the project.
Any other discussion? Do you have any motions? It's not?
Well,
Do we need to approve?
Yeah, I was going to say, apparently we're going to get some additions to both of these. I mean, how do you want to do that?
Mr. Patterson?
Well, the additions are the ones I recommended in the first, and we're dealing with 5B, the additions in, are you talking about 5B or 5A?
5B.
5B, the additions were actually a modification of the spreadsheet.
Okay.
We could make those modifications and bring that back to you again. The DDA calls for you to approve that on September 16th, which is where we're at today.
Yes.
As long as the Urban Renewal Commission is sensitive to that and don't mind making those modifications, or we need to...
I'll put forward
Could I interrupt for one moment?
Yeah.
Why don't you just make it a condition of it, and we'll
I'll
incorporate
I'll
it?
be happy to do that. I'll move to approve the Phase 1 and 2 of the Cove Detailed Development Plan, subject to the conditions of the modification by Phase 4 to deal with issues in terms of path and mitigation on the peninsula.
And we'll do those revisions like we did with the DDA and bring those back, and you can just approve those revisions.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Okay, let's take a vote.
I believe there was a speaker comment card.
Oh. Okay. 3 minutes. Mr. Edgar?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Paul Edgar. I'm a citizen of Oregon City. Two issues that I'd like to talk about. One is the substantial nature, and I would like to reiterate that, of all of the modifications that are being proposed. And I believe that the substantial nature of those modifications are such that it will have a high potential of bringing about possible litigation because they don't comply with Oregon City planning and rules. The transportation elements of this plan have not been properly vetted in planning. The impacts AM, PM, peak period, rush hour incidents of travel, or average daily trips, modify much of the travel transportation impacts throughout the whole area. Also, there are major considerations about, recently in the newspaper we've seen Judge Redding, federal judge, talking about mitigational considerations about salmon and steelhead fry, knowing that we had comments brought before this commission by ODF&W telling us how many salmon fry, steelhead fry come into the cove, and that the natural habitat, by cutting down these trees, as is proposed in 1 and 2, phases 1 and 2, will dramatically modify the sustainability of the water and that of the fish. This can throw this directly up into federal court. I just want you to make sure you're aware of this. Number 3 out of all of this stuff is you have to be aware of the fact before I'm 100 years of age and I feel healthy, I'm relatively young, but I'm 69 years of age. With all of the delays and all of the phases, there will be no increment coming into the taxpayers of Oregon City. We will be paying for all of the parks, all of the new burden, all of the new expenses. Everything will be paid for. And we will continually be paying for it because there will not be tax money coming in for it for a period. So I hope to God that I live to be 100 and see the day that it actually gets into the tax rolls. But you should really think about this.
Thank you. All right.
Could I make a comment?
Sure.
Just with regard to the transportation, we have, when we made these changes, we went back to Kittleson, who did the initial reports, and they did an updated study, and the scope of that study was reviewed by the city's traffic consultant and by ODOT. And the study came back, and ODOT was happy. We believe that the city and the city's consulting traffic engineer are happy with the study. So I just wanted to know that that aspect had indeed been taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? None? All right, take a vote.
Commissioner Neely,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
Commissioner Nocita,
No.
Commissioner Crocker,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
No.
Commissioner Norris,
Yes.
Commissioner Walters,
Yes.
Motion passes 6-3.
6
is
to
that
3.
right? Okay. Before we move on, I just want to make one, I guess, question or comment about Commissioner Nacita's idea for if the rivers isn't going to happen in the foreseeable future. I mean, is it appropriate for us to even talk to the owners of Oregon City Shopping Center and the note holder, the underlying loan holder, to see if we might be able to structure some kind of deal to make this a more complete, more favorable project? I'm throwing out the question. Maybe that's a question for Mr. Leland.
No, I mean, we haven't per se had conversation with them. I know that PPS has had conversations with them. I know that CenterCal had conversations with them. I think they've bumped into the same thing that Mr. Darrow was talking about in terms of the structure of the financing of that shopping center, which poses an issue. You also, again, the $22 million does give you capacity in your urban renewal plan, and the fact that you're not spending the 22 on the interchange that's coming elsewhere. So that's part of that $130 million maximum indebtedness. The issue still becomes a cash flow issue because you have to have increment to pay off that type of bonding. And so without these projects on the ground, you don't have the increment coming in to pass that type of bonding that you could do anything at this time with the shopping center. So somewhere down the line, but that may be, some of that will really be contingent upon the rivers and this project, because that's where you get a big influx of increment coming in, and without those, it'll be quite some time before you can look at that type of debt.
So
that
redeveloping a shopping center like that wouldn't generate enough increment then?
would generate probably very little. I mean, you would get some depending on what the redevelopment that would take place in the shopping center. That's assuming some would. If it was kind of some remodeling and taking out buildings, you might possibly even lose some increment. That probably, it's a hard question to answer without looking exactly what a plan would be and what we'd be looking at in terms of assessed value, but it'll be some time before we'd have that type of rate.
Okay.
It does give you capacity with the $130 million because you're not spending $22 million. So somewhere along the line, if the plan comes together, you would hope that you could generate that type of increment to go to $130 million, but you're going to have some bigger projects in there to do that.
Okay. Commissioner West?
Well, and if a private developer wouldn't want to pay $5 million just to close a loan and pay an overpriced area, why would we as a city do it, especially in light of all the things we might potentially lose from it?
That would be dependent upon if you could really bring forth a quality development that added sufficient increment. I mean, that's why you leverage urban renewal bonds to do that sort of thing. This will be a tough one to put together. I won't say it's impossible, but it may be sometime we get in a position to really look at that.
Commissioner Walton.
Oh, I just was wondering if there's an estimate, or do you have any knowledge of when that prepayment penalty expires?
I don't recall from the doing it with them. I know it was a very extended period. It isn't really quote-unquote a prepayment penalty. It was a rather different term. It was locked in. That you had to pay it off really long. It really was a function of making sure that those people, because it was, that the note was sold off to more than one person. So it was a matter of how do you negotiate with 5 or 6 or 7 people to pay it off, and all of them would want to have it paid off in total, so that for the full term that it would have ran, they would get their full return. And I'm done.
All right, let's move on. If there's no further comments, we'll move on to item 5C, urban renewal debt financing. Mr. Patterson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, at a previous meeting, there had been some debate about whether the cities of Taggart and Gresham submitted urban renewal debt financing to a vote. We did contact both cities, and we received copies of the appropriate sections of their charter and reviewed those. We also talked to the Vice President of the Association of Oregon Redevelopment Agencies and asked if they knew of anyone in the state that was asking the public to vote on urban renewal debt financing. I've sent you copies of the email responses both from the city manager of Taggart and have summarized his response in your staff report, as well as we talked to the senior assistant city attorney of Gresham, and that's also summarized in there as well. Just to make a long discussion somewhat short, neither city requires urban renewal debt financing to be voted on. What they have done is they do ask for votes in regards to plan amendment stuff, creating the plan. Those things had been voted on. Gresham indicates, again, if they had a substantial plan amendment versus a minor plan amendment, they'd require that for a vote. When talking to the Vice President of Aurora, Association of Oregon Redevelopment Agencies, he reports, or she reports that no cities in the state that they know of require debt financing to go to a public vote. So, but if you look at the charter and you read it, and they do admit that's somewhat confusing, I can see where the confusion might come from in that.
Discussion. Commissioner Nocita.
Yeah, I wanted to share with folks something that I've drafted, which is language taking both from the Tigard Charter and from Mr. Yates' petition of a few years ago that would offer voters the right to vote both on bonds and on new and amended urban renewal plan amendments. And this is just my thoughts on how something like this might work in Oregon City. The provisions that Mr. Patterson just cited, to the extent that they are voting to approve a new urban renewal plan and the financing mechanisms proposed, they are allowing folks to vote on the financing. In our case, since we adopted an urban renewal plan without a vote of the people, our citizens have never had that ability. What this would do, it would in Section 58, even under our existing plan, allow folks the ability to vote on the bonds. And then, similar to these other cities, the remaining sections would allow them to vote on new plans and amendments to plans. So I'll just share that with folks to mull over.
Do you want this for a future agenda item?
Sure, if you're interested in discussing it.
Well, you're putting forward, and I think anything put forward of this nature
Sure.
probably should be discussed.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would request that.
Okay. Put that as a future agenda item. Any other discussion? All right, we'll move on to 5E, changes in City Hall project construction contract.
Did you purposely skip 5D?
Oh, I'm sorry. Silly me. 5D. urban renewal financial commitment to Rivers Development. Mr. Patterson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the question has been just kind of review what the financial commitment to the rivers is. It's a little speculative at this point since I don't have a proposal setting here that we can refer to, so I'll go back and talk about some of the what-ifs, at least where the discussion has been to date. The original commitment to the rivers had evolved was $39.6 million. Again, $22 million of that was for the jug handle project, and that now is being funded through the transportation package, so that piece comes out of it. So our latest discussions have been in the area of $17.6 million, even though you have capacity to do something a little bit more to make that project happen if you so chose. Again, in doing that, too, it really gives you some interesting abilities, because the problem that you had with the Rivers project before is the weight of that interchange was what was making it very difficult to finance. You take that out of it, just from some analysis, and this is done at a higher level. I don't want to mention that because that kind of encourages folks may want to make that presentation. And again, this was based on a number of different assumptions that would, again, may or may not come to pass. So I don't want to hang too much on this, but it looks like we could have the amount required here, again, a little greater than the 17.6, but let's say the 17.6, if the development took place in 2012, as we had originally talked about, and there's a good chance that would push back now, given the economy as well, that you could bond that with the first increment coming off of that, and have additional monies available, again, with just the rivers, and if you had the cove and the rivers, that increases that even more, of a fairly considerable amount available for other projects. Now, again, what makes this an interesting project, as the discussion with the rivers, is they actually will front end these costs, and then the bonds would do the bonds after that, so the increment would be created. So from a financial point of view, there would really not be much of a reason why you wouldn't want to put together a program like that. Now, that's not to say you may not have other reasons why you wouldn't want to do the project, but from a financial perspective, if they're going to front the cost and then you bond it on the back end to reimburse through the increment created, even, and it's giving you additional increment going into the urban renewal district, from a financial perspective, that's a pretty big win for the urban renewal agency. So.
Okay. Discussion? All right. We move on to 5E. Changes to City Hall project construction contract with Mr. Archer.
Good evening, Commission. The item before you is a recommendation from staff to. Oh, yes, thank you. Is a recommendation from staff to approve a construction contract change for the new City Hall project in the amount of $210,000, $210,969.40. This would bring the total amount of the existing contract to $1,394,919.49. The proposed contract change that we're asking for approval also includes an extension of the substantial completion date to the date of November 6, 2009. You'll recall that the Urban Renewal Commission approved the bid award and construction agreement with Team Construction in the amount of $1,183,950 for the new City Hall project. Since that time, the construction process has been well underway, and a number of contract change orders have been incurred. These types of changes, from smaller ones to a larger one that I'm going to discuss in a little bit more detail, are typical, especially in a project of this size and complexity, and especially with the fact that we're renovating an existing building. The most substantial of these that is being included in this construction change order is the parking lot and landscape redesign part of the project. I'm going to describe that a little bit more in detail. There are a number of other changes that are included that comprise the rest of that $210,969.40. Those are listed on your written staff report. I won't go through those unless you have specific questions or comments about those. I would also note that this construction change order includes a $5,000 contingency for anything else that might come up for the remainder of the project, so that we don't have to come back and ask for that again. As I indicated, the most significant cost impact of the change orders is the redesign of the parking lot and the associated landscape areas. This will considerably change the existing design, including altering the traffic flow and implementing LID, or low impact design standards. The changes are not required, this is important to note, they're not required of the city or the Urban Renewal Commission. However, they are being strongly recommended to you by staff. They are proposed as a result of the preliminary site plan and the design review process, including some significant feedback we received from the neighborhood. The improvements to the site plan are recommended due to the following factors. And I'd like to go through these because I think they're very important to talk about. First, the use of low-impact design techniques, or low-impact development techniques, including swales, infiltration planters, rain gardens. This will reduce the amount of direct stormwater runoff from the parking lot, and it should help reduce the impacts to the adjacent streams and also to the water quality. The city is in progress of working on adoption of new LID standards. So the parking lot and City Hall, which, as you know, will be a LEED certified building, this will serve as an excellent example in our community, and the city will be taking the lead on low impact development type of design for a parking lot. In essence, this is a green parking lot retrofit. It's a reuse of an existing parking lot to develop to these better standards, and also reuse of our existing building to raise the bar for developers. The existing parking spaces and the amount of interior and perimeter landscaping did not conform to dimensional requirements under the parking code. We weren't required to change these initially because we didn't plan any significant modifications to the parking lot. Now that we've proposed changes, we are going to actually meet those standards, so this is a good thing. And lastly, this approach will allow us a greater amount of flexibility with respect to the code requirements for landscaping and dimensional standards, so that the number of parking spaces is maximized. Vehicular circulation pattern within the parking lot is substantially improved, and pedestrian access from Center Street and 7th are improved. We've got this is a little bit of a technical drawing, so I apologize, but it's the best one that we could come up with to give you just a look at the parking lot. See if I can find the pointer here. This is 7th Street, and this is Center Street. Of course, the existing building's right here. You'll recall that the existing parking lot had an ingress-egress point right here. That is going to go away under this plan. That area along there is the main area where we'll be doing the bioswales, the rain gardens, and then some improved landscaping. Excuse me. This changes the entrance to the parking lot to that spot right there off of Center. That was actually recommended by the city's traffic engineer, that they did not feel that leaving the access open on 7th Street was good for traffic flow. So that was so we're implementing something that I think helps our traffic situation. We've changed the flow internally. This will be a circular type of pattern versus where it was just kind of in and out, and each were one way. We will have, I believe it's 2 spaces that are carpool and carpool spaces, and sorry, I just blanked out on
Hybrid.
Thank you. Hybrid spaces. And we will also have some designated visitor spaces only, so that those can't be utilized by staff. And this area over here is also part of the City Hall's parking lot. That will be, along with the rest of the parking lot, In doing this, we're basically going to be repaving the entire parking lot. So it will be a significant aesthetic improvement as well as all the other features that I've just discussed. That concludes the content of my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, the recommendation is for the approval of the contract change order in the amount that I've discussed.
Okay, we have a bunch here. Start with Commissioner Neely, then West, and Smith.
Does this reduce the number of parking spaces?
No, I don't believe it does. It changes the use of some of those. As I said, some of them will be designated for certain uses, but we really aren't. I don't believe we're losing parking.
Commissioner West.
So when I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it, Scott. When the alley that goes between Center Street and High Street, so will you be able to go out? It looks like you have a diagonal. I don't know what that means. Oh, that's just a walkway.
That's just
Okay.
a walkway because this is an ADA space, as is this, and that's the cross path across the alleyway. So
you'll be able to get in and out of there two different ways.
you can use the alleyway for access into High Street. We're not going to overly promote that or encourage it, but it is an open public alley.
Well, actually, there still is two ways because both parking lots there, it looks like you can get in and out.
Right.
A little.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Smith.
Yeah.
The changes to the parking lot, I think, were very smart. And so I like that. I'm going to, of course, vote no against this anyway because I don't support the whole project, and I have concerns about some of the other change orders, and I'm curious about what it means by basement revisions, and if that has anything to do with the issues with computer kinds of uses being down there, and that was talked about prior to us approving this and all that. What does it refer to?
Those are not for that purpose. The changes don't have to do with what you're referring to. These have to do with, I think, some of the walling and floor covering things.
Which probably wouldn't have been changed if.
No, because actually, under the previous plan, we were actually going to put the entire city server in there. Right. And so we don't have. There's no need to upgrade that or to change it for. We're still putting. There are still servers in there, but not to the level that was before. That was just equipment coming to the city, so to the new city hall. So we're not improving anything, but there's no need to. In other words, there's no need to back up that construction. These have to do with other issues.
Was the damage to the brick done during construction, or is that prior to us starting?
Prior
we didn't
to
know it was there.
It was discovered after we started construction. We didn't realize that those issues were there. This is an existing building. It's older.
I understand that.
We found as many things out as we could, but as you go through it, you just find
Yes,
things
I
that
know
need to be fixed.
Windows. What on the second floor? Windows.
Those are just interior windows. It had to do with daylighting some of the office space. Once we started construction, we looked at some
Those
workspaces.
are not exterior windows that we all voted to keep there.
Those are not. Those are interior windows.
Very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Zita.
I was wondering if I could respectfully invite the representative from our neighborhood association up. I just wanted to ask Mr. Gifford if some of these changes respond to the concerns the neighborhood had expressed regarding the site plan.
Mr. Gifford.
Thank you, Commissioner Zita. My name is William Gifford, and co-chair for the Neighborhood Association, McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, in which this is done. We had some initial concerns about the original parking lot design, and as nearly as I can tell, everything that we had a concern about has been directly and positively been ameliorated. So we have no issues at all with this design. We're very pleased with how it's turned out.
Are the funds being requested, do they directly? Are they going towards the implementation of your recommendations as a neighborhood group? For example, I understand
our concerns were not regarding the funding.
What's that?
Our concerns were not regarding the funding. They were regarding the functionality, the location of tree removal, the location of the driveways, and the sound and aesthetics of the generator. So we weren't we weren't issued. We weren't. It wasn't that we don't care about the money. It's that that was not our primary focus.
But to address some of your concerns, there has to be money spent, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may make one further comment, one of the reasons that that this design is really working well to answer Commissioner Neely's concern about loss of parking spaces is because those two Center Street, those two 7th Street driveways are not done. That actually adds the parking space. I don't know if the balance is there,
Yeah.
but it has certainly improved the number of spaces available over the original design.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner West?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm just thrilled that you took those 7th Street ingress and egress off. I drive that spot every day, multiple times, and on that, I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Urban Renewal Commission approve the City Hall construction contract change orders in the total amount of $210,969.40, for a total not to exceed the contract amount of $1,394,919.49.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'll have a comment afterwards, but it does not have to do with this specific.
Okay. Let's call the vote.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Nasita?
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-1.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Did you have
a question?
It's a statement, but I made it earlier on. I had a person make an observation, and it is true. That is, when you're approaching in a vehicle, you're approaching on High Street, you're approaching 7th Street. The pole building, when the most northern parking space is occupied by a car, the pole building and the car leaves you blind to pedestrians that are coming off the promenade, and the retaining wall on the other side in the car does the same thing, especially for children and so forth. I think I suggested those two parking spaces be eliminated. I went down there and looked at it, and it was quite true. It's a rather dangerous crossing that's there, and I think it would be just a simple fix to remove those two parking spaces, and then the driver has a good view of people coming off the promenade and crossing the street there.
Are you talking about on the west side of High Street?
Actually, on both sides of High Street, because the retaining wall actually, and the car actually forms a bit of a blind spot as well.
I'll look into that.
I know the City Commission meeting is supposed to start in a couple minutes. Mr. Patterson, you have... Should we hold the grants over, or?
I would recommend that you do that, and we'll roll those over. Again, we need to meet on, I think it's the 30th, have a meeting scheduled, and we can roll those over to that meeting.
I see Mrs. Griffin not raising her hand. I would like to see what she has to say.
I wanted to say, I think a couple of these we've held over on more than one occasion, have we
What
not?
are we going to do?
Well, if you can...
What are we going to do?
I would suggest we can start our City Commission meeting later. And
you can do that. You can go another 30 minutes, and it depends how long you're going to take for urban rural.
That's right. But the point is, we've actually backed these up more than once. And
Is the rest of the commission okay holding?
Try to do it in a half an hour.
Another, a half 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that everybody?
Let's try.
Okay.
So we're having Planning Commission sit out and wait?
Join.
Okay. So let's move on then to. We are switching G for F, so we will move on to 5G, which is now 5F, Urban Renewal Storefront Improvement Program for 1102 7th Street. Sorry to throw a curveball.
Actually, Actually, I appreciate that. Makes it a little bit easier. Bear with me. I'm nervous. And poor Mr. Burgard probably would have done better with Miss Kraushar. But anyway, you have seen Mr. Burgard at the last Urban Renewal Commission meeting. He had we extended a grant and modified it for improvements to a structure he has on 7th Street. And he's here right now, and I would like to invite him to come up. But Mr. Burgard, in case you have any questions for him, but you have already authorized a grant. It's kind of a different situation where he was awarded money a year ago. We extended his grant, and now he wants to do phase 2 of his plan to improve his property, which is landscaping, which includes landscaping the yard, rock pathways, and retaining walls. And as you can see from the work that he's done so far, we've been very pleased with his progress.
I actually brought some more updated pictures, just to kind
Yeah.
of show, because I know the ones that we submitted weren't the best, but I don't know if you just want to kind of... There's also interior photos to kind of show that there has been a lot more progress than what's on the outside as well.
But anyway, Christina Robertson Gardner has also expressed a lot of appreciation for the work and the care he's put into this building to restore it. And so again, this motion is a little bit convoluted because he is asking for more than the $10,000. And so I put 2 different motions in there so that you could decide which one, or maybe you choose to do neither, whether you want to award him the balance of the $10,000 or whether you want to award him another $10,000 to do the landscaping work. So if you have any questions about that. And then it goes on to say and then that would be the continuation of the motion.
Commissioner Neely?
I just want to be clear, this $10,000, excuse me, the previous grant amount, which is the $10,000 minus the $2,451.87, that was awarded in this fiscal year?
Yeah, Jake was actually here.
Yeah, okay, and I just wanted...
It was originally awarded last fiscal year.
But since we had the modifications and the other stuff, that it got changed.
So the monies were awarded in this fiscal year?
Yeah,
Okay.
I really consider this to be a second application.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's up to your discretion whether or not you want to award.
Is that right, Mr. Patterson? Did the money come out of this fiscal budget? or last?
It will.
What I'm seeing here is the original requested amount was $75.48.
Yeah, double that, and then exactly.
Yeah.
His share is $75.48
So this would be another 10,000 grant.
On top of that?
Yeah.
on top of that.
Okay. Commissioner West?
A couple comments. I think that your lowest bid is that what it was? The $25,000 is a lot of money for a landscaped lot.
It's because it's a lot of hardscape type of stuff to try to keep it more original to the architect. That's why I'm working with the Historic Review Board to try to keep it true to that. So there's a lot of hardscape stuff. That's really majority of it is just, it's very expensive for that.
Yeah, and that it didn't look like it even went all the way up to the garage. So I don't know if you're even landscaping the entire lot.
The reason I didn't want, we can do stuff on the garage area, but that's actually a second tax lot. So later on down the road, I'll probably have some other ideas for it, years down. So I didn't really want to double into it, but if we needed to, it's not a problem. We can add some plants and then kind of tie it in as well.
And then my other thing was, because this will ultimately become a rental, to put $25,000 in landscaping and then no guarantee of it being kept up. But I suppose on Urban Renewal Commission, we give money for painting and all kinds of other improvements, and we have no guarantee that any of that will be kept up either. So that's just my 2 comments.
I mean, the other thing, I would I do a lot of the work that's on the building right now, so I mean, I'm obviously going to be there to maintain, upkeep, whatnot, but I also do have plans of hiring a landscaper or a garden maintenance company to come by every so often to keep it maintained.
The best diagram of his plans is in the packet. Kind of shows on the overhead. And landscaping and retaining walls are included as, allowed reimbursable expenses.
Yeah, and I did go through like the M&As, and I got pretty much consensus approval from them. And then Christina's notes basically say that she's for it as well. But there are some things that we'll discuss as far as, the way that we utilize some of the plants and whatnot. So she's pretty much for it as well.
Commissioner Neely?
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, whether you're concerned it's a rental or it's the individual themselves that are in there. The fact is, a lot of the stuff down on Main Street is are leased facilities and rented facilities too. I mean, there could probably be more of them than there are owner done. I guess my comment is simply this: we're running out of money. I would probably not support going for the full 10,000, even though your request was made apparently in last fiscal year. We're still awarding it now, and that's probably the direction I would take.
Commissioner Walters?
Sorry, I didn't bring the spreadsheet that was provided last time. Can you remind us what our current balance is to award these storefront grants so that we know what we're working with?
In fact, I'll run you off the latest copy, so
Thank you.
you'll have that. If you awarded all of these grants this evening that you have, that would take your balance to, you'd have a balance of $9,792 left. So you have room to do these this evening if you chose to do that, but
I have removed Kruger Lumber from that. They're out of the queue because they were denied. The only other thing that I consider to be pending is a sign at McHale Chiropractic. It was pulled from the application, and that's going to be $1,500 to $2,000.
Yeah, but we're not even halfway through the fiscal year. I mean, there's still applications.
This is the construction season. Yeah, true.
But I know that this will make as far as making, like we talked about last commission, about the window that you regretted, giving the money to. This will make a huge visual impact, a positive visual impact, especially on the upper part of 7th Street. So, I mean, this really is kind of the main thing that we're looking for. I mean, I made a huge impact just with the building alone. So, I mean, that whole completed project really would, be what ultimately you're looking for to utilize that money. So.
The wording here is a little bit confusing. If they approve the grant in amount of $4,974 city share, the city share is the agency's share, isn't it?
Yes.
So that we're approving a grant of if we approve the lighter one, we're approving a grant of $2,451.87. He can come up with that, whatever other money he can come up with, but it's got to be at least that amount. So I think it's a little bit confusing to say we have a grant amount of $4,904.
His grant is actually $4,900. The city pays half, he pays half.
That's not the grant amount.
For the remaining of the original.
Yeah, the grant is for $2,451.87. I'm going to move to award a grant of $2,451.87 with the understanding that the match will equal or exceed that amount. That except the other contribution he's making will exceed or equal that amount.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Nocita?
I'd like to ask the applicant, what do you think about that?
I guess I'm confused. So basically, you're moving to go for giving the remainder of the original 10,000, but not for the other.
Does that still allow you to do something of value in your own mind?
Well, I discussed it with the gentleman that I chose to do, which is actually the lowest bid, and he was saying, well, we can start doing some of the stuff, but the question is what can we do? Because the wall would be a huge impact thing, and that is probably one of the largest things. A lot of the stonework and stuff, we can clean it up. We can, but then the question is, when I come back, am I going to come back for another 10 next fiscal year because what we did really didn't go with what we're ultimately trying to get to. So it's just kind of like do it right the first time. You
I
know.
think in our to our comment in our new revised guidelines, we actually allowed. It used to be every 5 years you couldn't apply, and now it is every year. So I think that's great for projects just like this. If you can't do it all in one fell swoop, that you can come back the next year rather than having to wait 5 years. Commissioner West.
The way I'm understanding it is he saved the 490374 because he did the work himself off of the original grant request. Am I correct? So he saved that. I'd like to see him get a little bit more than $2,500. And would $5,000, be enough to do a job?
I think
Maybe
it would
there's a
help lot more,
median
that's for
between 2,400 and 10,000.
Okay. Well, we have a
motion on the
We have a
floor.
motion on the
I'm
floor.
not willing to withdraw it.
okay. So not withdrawing that motion.
Let me, if I might make my point, based upon what the city manager just presented to us, if we were to approve all of these, and of course we may not, but we would have less than $10,000 left to make an award subsequent to this.
That's first come, first serve.
Well, I understand that, but the point is we've already awarded $10,000.
That wasn't my understanding. We've only awarded $5,000.
We've awarded 7,500.
Excuse me, that's right, 7,500. I'm sorry, I didn't mean 10,000.
Right up at the top.
Okay, 70. Okay, got it. Okay,
So
now I
Urban
got it.
Urban Renewal wrote a check for $7,500
Yeah.
to Mr.
Well, potentially.
We've encumbered,
once you finish it.
Yeah,
we've
and-
encumbered $7,500.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
some
I
of
got
that is also based on when it's finished. So we had projected numbers, which probably will not even fall within that. So it'll probably be a little bit less that can fall into the landscaping as well.
If you look at that spreadsheet you just got, you'll see the requested amount and the amount that's been paid. So that requested amount is kind of what's encumbered, because if that all gets done and they submit that whatever, but some of those may roll over in the next fiscal year. That's why we've always had a little extra money there, because some of them just don't get paid during this year because the work doesn't get.
I tell you what, I could amend my motion to be that the grant, both grants, that this one and the previous one, do not exceed $10,000. That is, if you in fact do not realize the cost of the 7,000, whatever it was, that money can actually be applied to the landscaping. So would that help?
Everything else.
If the second's willing to do it, my motion is that the combination of the two grant requests be supported up to amount of a total of $10,000. The second willing to accept that?
Yes, I do, except I just want to remind the commission that we did have some concerns about some changes that were made to a previous grant without coming back to the commission. So we should probably clarify that point, that these changes are probably, whether we want to see what the actual changes are going to be, or if we're going to allow the applicant to use his best judgment. I think we should clarify that now so that the expectation is clear.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
I'm going to vote the same on this as I will for all of the following this evening. And after our last urban renewal meeting, I made a motion that we did not approve any more of these grants until we had some guidelines to follow to do so. We did not obviously have even a second to that motion, apparently, and I then fell back on our guidelines that we have had in place to vote on the last two from our last meeting. I'm shocked that it was not on our agenda tonight to discuss the guidelines. We're almost out of, we've almost given out all the money, and we're getting close to that. Are we going to wait until we've given all the money to decide the guidelines for spending it? I'm going to abstain from all of these because I don't think it's fair to hold the applicants responsible for this, so I will not vote no on them. But I'm not voting on them. I'm kind of getting sick of talking about it. And, you know, we don't have any guidelines in place. We're just writing checks.
In the interest of time, I'm going to call the question.
Yeah, let's vote.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
I'm sorry, I'm confused in how much he'll get then if it's up to 10,000. So he'll get the 2451 that's left?
No, he'll get
Yeah.
for both projects would equal.
For both projects, it's up to
Everything,
10,000.
he'll get 10,000 this year, not to exceed.
No.
Commissioner Smith?
Abstain.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Norris?
Yes.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes.
And Chair Crocker?
Yes. Motion passes 6 yes, 2 no, and 1 abstention. And quickly, I'd like to make a, I need to leave for these next upcoming applications, and I'd like to make a motion, if everybody's okay, to hand the chair off to our most recent chair, Norris, for these. If there's any problems with that? Okay, so I will leave for these.
Just whether it's okay for
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
So, really quick, the clarification was if there was no, we needed to make sure he didn't have any major revisions to, or what do you want to say?
I just want to make sure that when he comes in for reimbursement, it's obviously going to be different from what he's proposed, and that we give him permission to exercise judgment without having to come back to the commission for approval.
Okay. Do we need to vote? No? Any objections to that? No? Okay.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is item
5F?
5F, 719 Main Street.
Now I'm out of order. Do you want me to give you 2 sentences on an update on Rocky's concern?
Sure.
No.
In the interest of time,
I know you're
say
in a
no.
hurry. Nancy Crowshire had requested that you give her comments, changes that you would like to get. She has received no emails. Therefore, she has not presented any updates to it. So that's the answer to that. Okay, these next 3 applications are by T5 Equities. As you can see, I just kind of want to summarize and say they're all by the same applicant. They're all on Main Street. As you can see, they have applied for other grant applications, none this year and none for these buildings. So that's important. And it is okay in our requirements that you apply, that applicants can apply for more than one building, because that meets the intent of the program. We want to improve downtown, whether one property owner owns it or whether multiple property owners own it. They're doing improvements to 3 different buildings. They do have a history of, I think, very good projects. I believe that they have done Mi Familia. One of the owners owns the funnel box, which was an urban renewal grant application, and to do the exterior to that. And then another building that they did is actually one of these buildings here. I believe it's the one that, which one is that? 706 and 708 Main Street. And I believe that if you look at that, you'll find that it was very tastefully done. And they're coming back to do more improvements to it, but that would be this one here. So, I think that they have a really good track record of doing good work. So this application here, they want to install new awnings and metal housings. I don't believe that they're replacing the awning frames, but they're repairing it. And Chris Edmondson is here. He's the applicant, and he can answer any of those questions. They want to do new storefront windows, new ceilings over the entrances, removing and matching the marble around the base, with upper-level tiles, new cove detail, and prepping and painting the entire building. And I did get comments back from Christina Robertson Gardner. Those are not included in your packet. The one thing she requested is that the new awnings be replaced, or that they be appropriate to the building, and that they be 2 separate awnings, and that they not have the Velcro awning, which makes them appear like they're one, the little piece. So, and Chris has agreed to do that. So, if you have any comments, or if you have any questions for
In the
Chris.
interest of time, if we could do it on a question basis in case
Okay.
there are none. So, may I either have questions or a motion to on this request, which is for $10,000 from the agency?
I'm just kind of curious if there's, how
Commissioner
much
Neely.
of this might, oh, I'm sorry. Am I recognized?
Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry. I just have a question, is how much of this is undoing some stuff you already done?
Actually, we haven't done anything to this building just yet. This is the old hobby shop building.
Okay.
Recently purchased it, so we're starting
Scratch.
from scratch on this one.
All right.
So.
Okay. Commissioner West.
I'd like to. I'd like to make a motion to approve a grant in the amount of, well, I suppose $10,000 is our max, to T5 Equities LLC to update the exterior of 719 Main.
Second.
There are questions? Not. Nancy, the vote, please. Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Shaw.
Well, this one is, I think, something we can be a little proactive on. When I walked through these applications last night, I noticed that, and I mean, we all admire Mr. Crocker's value to downtown and stuff and his work. And I kind of looked at these and said, well, it looks like the major recipient of our fund is going to be one of our commission members. And that's fine, we all love him. So I kind of let it slide till today, and I happened to be downtown having lunch, and believe it or not, we do have an opponent to urban renewal funds, and he kind of brought it to my attention, too, that seems like one of the landlords down there is going to be recipient to the major funding source, and who happens to sit on the commission. So I just want to make sure that everything's legal, because if this becomes public at all, that we are responding, we're being
It's
proactive.
currently public.
It is.
Yeah.
Right now.
But if this guy knew it today, and I want to make sure we're responding to it now, instead of reacting to it
Oh, I see.
via the papers and whatever, that everything's okay, no problems.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with doing that, particularly in review of the fact that Mr. Crocker has removed himself from this discussion, so it's not something that he is being part of that decision-making process. In fact, he has left the building, so it's really up to this board as it sits at the present time to make that decision.
Okay.
Further comment or discussion? Now the vote, please, Nancy.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Abstain?
Commissioner Nasita?
No.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes.
And Chair Norris.
Aye. Motion passes 6-1 with 1 abstention. Okay, let's move quickly on to 706 and 708.
Okay, same applicant. I do have, this is 706 Main Street, and this is the one where they did work before, and they want to finish the project, and so it just involves replacing the brick with, you have it in your packet, replace the brick wall and planter, replacing it with stucco wall and windows, and replacing rotting wood floors at both entrances. The only comments I got were from Christina Robertson Gardner. She requested, and this should be in the motion, that the 3 windows, it looks too contemporary. She wants them to be compatible with the upper floors, and she recommends a minimum of 6-inch spacing between the windows. And again, I think that Chris Edmiston has agreed to that.
Can I make one comment about that?
Sure, quickly.
Actually, we definitely will do that if that is the consensus of the board. The reason that we've submitted them the way we have is because we want to go match kind of the storefront on either side of it, in which the windows are connected and there's just a thin
a thin frame between them. So that was the look that we were going for, but we're obviously open to.
She wants it to match the upper level.
Okay, this is for a grant of $9,975. More comments, Commissioner Nocita.
This particular application I have issues with because we don't have actual design guidelines adopted for downtown. I've always been concerned about what we approve, and it does become kind of, just what we're feeling that particular day. But I have voiced in the past a particular concern that by default of having design guidelines, that what I feel is historically inaccurate use of stucco on a building like this is not appropriate. When I saw what happened to this building originally, it was disappointing to me, the stucco exterior, and because of that track record, I really think this is really adverse to what the storefront guideline program is supposed to be about, and I'm actually going to move for denial of this application.
That was a motion? Okay, is there a second? Motion dies for lack of second. So, is there someone else who wishes to put forward a motion? Please.
I'll put forward the motion.
Commissioner Neely?
The motion is to award the contract to the storefront improvements at 706 and 708 for $9,975 with the recommendations put forward by Christine. And that my previous motion should have included that as well, and it didn't, but he's indicated that he was going to follow them, so I think we're covered. But, yeah.
Okay. A second, please.
I'll second in a comment.
Okay.
Quick comment. I respectfully understand what you're saying, Commissioner Nocita, but the only reason is we had started this. We knew this last year that he was going to do the second phase of it, so I think it'll at least finish it with. It wouldn't be fair if we said the first part you could do and then now just change it all over. But I do agree that the Main Street guidelines, when we're finished or when that group is finished, will really help us with a lot more historical significance. So for.
Any other comments before we vote? Nancy, the vote, please.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Abstain.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes.
Chair Norris?
Aye. Motion passes 6-1 with one abstention. Okay, and then the last one of this section, 716, Maine.
716 is a little more complicated. Christina Robertson Gardner reviews all of these, and she always has, and she always wants them to be restored to their to the original integrity to the greatest extent possible. And this one here, the applicant is proposing is a $10,000 grant. They're proposing removing the existing siding and framing, repairing, patching. The brick and stucco on the front. So basically, whatever's uncovered, they want to put new storefront windows, new front doors, and they want stamped concrete at the entrances. That's not the sidewalk, it's the actual entrance, which is now cracked and failing. As you can see now, this is probably one of the least desirable looking buildings in downtown. And actually,
close.
Yeah, I think Chris told me that. But the one thing is that Christina Robertson Gardner's comment is that your approval should be limited to the removal of the non-historic facade, and she wants that once the building has been uncovered, all efforts should be made to rehabilitate and repair the features that remain. And if a new window system is required and repair is not an option, the applicant should be required to return to the URC for a secondary review of the work proposed. So basically, I think it all agrees with my motion, but if he uncovers anything that is not in agreement with this, we need to bring it back.
But we don't know what that cost is.
Well, it's not going to exceed $10,000.
Right, well, right, I understand.
And if it's
But it could be
anything,
less.
if it's anything substantial, we would bring it back.
This is, okay, Commissioner West.
So with the $10,000 and you take off the green siding there, whatever it's made of, and you open a can of worms and it's now be your $31,000 project has now become 50, you're still committed to finishing that exterior.
Definitely, yeah. We're very committed to downtown Main Street. I think all of our previous projects will speak to that, and we definitely will see it through to completion.
Okay. Well,
Okay, go ahead.
I'll move approval, or move to approve a grant in the amount of $31,250 with the city shares being $10,000 to T5 Equities to update 716 Main Street.
With the restrictions that
Oh,
our
with
staff-
restrictions that Christina Robertson Gardner edits or modifies or comments on your
Removal
work.
to be non-historic facade.
Yeah, on this.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Further comment or discussion? Nancy, the vote, please.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Abstain?
Commissioner Nasita?
No.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes.
Chair Norris?
Aye. Motion passes 6-1 with one abstention.
I've got a question. You said there's one more application that's coming through. Is that correct?
No, actually, there is one existing application. It was the McHale Chiropractic Clinic. I pulled the sign portion of it out of the application so that they could get busy painting. So once that goes through the HRC, we'll bring the sign back, and that was around $1,500 to $2,000.
I'm
So-
going to move that we do not accept, beyond this one thing, accept any other applications until we deal with the issues that have been brought forward by Mr. Smith and by Mr. Nasita, design standards in particular and criteria. We're going to be down, we have brought the amount down to a very small amount. If we had anything that was approaching $10,000, you probably wouldn't be able to fund it anyway. But I think we need this discussion. It's something that can't happen in simply a meeting's time. It's going to take some work. And so, with the exception of this potential request that's coming forward, that we do not accept any more requests for the grants.
This is a motion. Is there a second? Moved. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I think this is why I'd also like to make another request. I guess I could do it after the vote. A comment on the motion? Nancy, the vote, please.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
It's Rocky. Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nasita?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Aye.
Chair Norris?
Aye. I just have a comment. My comment is that, the announcement of the vote. I think it was 9 to 1.
8 to 0.
8 to 0, thank you. I wasn't keeping track of that one. I was thinking about the comments.
Abstention.
You didn't abstain on this one.
No, he moved. He moved.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
It was unanimous.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's unanimous. I would like to request that on all applications that come, all agendas that come with applications, that the spreadsheet always be provided of the numbers, and that the criteria always be attached.
I agree.
So that they're like a permanent part of the packet, if that would be possible.
Okay. I should also indicate or re-echo Ms. Crushhour's request of you that if you have comments you want to submit in regards to that criteria, we need those in developing it.
Well, I
Why
agree with
this
you,
ne-
but I really think we need to bring the Historic Review Board into this discussion, frankly. And so we can put forward some comments, but I think it's one of these things that really takes it's one of these things that takes a work session.
Yeah.
Well, I agree that, in fact, that's what we had talked about was a work session. I think there's two processes. One has to do with the design standards, and my understanding that was actually being worked on by the Main Street Board. We need them to bring that forward, and then we can bring the groups together. The other has to do with the criteria, and that's what we were looking for input from any board member who had some. So
That's what I think. The criteria is what we need a work session on. We don't need to send an email and try to
Well, we're just trying to put things together. so
Well, if we
can
have
that
specific
discussion.
ideas, I'd suggest getting the email there so we have a focus
Have
for our
something to
discussion.
put on the table.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that those define the overall topics that we'll be talking about.
Anything else, Mr. Patterson, city manager report? All
Just
done?
September 30.
Okay. Commissioner West?
I sure look forward to seeing all the new nice changes downtown. That's really taking a lot of buildings. It's going to be looking good.
Oh, I want to echo that. I think we've done good work
Yes,
with these
it's really
grants.
been a
They're
value.
going to be very impactful, and I really they'll make very positive changes.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll adjourn the meeting.